Ja, und wir wechseln jetzt quasi die Perspektive. Wir haben gerade eine ganze Menge über digitale Identitäten aus der deutschen Perspektive mitgenommen. Wie können digitale Identitäten vorangetrieben werden von uns und mit uns? Unser Summit ist aber vor allem auch dafür da, dass wir voneinander lernen. Und es gibt in der Tat einige EU-Länder, die das Thema digitale Identitäten schon 2, 3 Schritte weitergebracht haben, als wir das in Deutschland bisher geschafft haben. Und ich freue mich, dass wir für unsere letzte Panel-Diskussion heute nochmal die internationale Perspektive einnehmen und genau diesen Lerneffekt auch voranbringen wollen. As our final session is an international one, please allow me to switch into English because our speakers are English too. As I just said, our European neighbors have been quite successful with digital identity and a bit more successful than we have been here in Germany, and I'm very happy that we get to learn from our EU friends, and that's the title of our session today, Learnings and Inspirations from EU Friends. Because if you look at Belgium, for instance, the It's Me project reached a 22% adoption rate among the population already. France also has very ambitious goals in achieving digital identity adoption above the 25 million user mark in 2021, so this year. And Italy just surpassed the 20 million user mark of its public digital identity system. So there are quite a lot of users that are onboarded on the digital systems in the digital ID ecosystems already. And our 3 panelists will be looking into the success factors, so what drove the digital identity movement and what was really necessary to convince the users to join the new ecosystem. So please join me in welcoming our 3 experts today from France, Belgium and Italy. It's Silvia van der Velde. She is Head of Business Development, Marketing and Communication at It's Me. Christine Ballien is Director of the program France Connect. She will be offering the French perspective. I'm very glad she's here today. And Antonio Torresano will be our speaker from Italy. He's the Managing Director, International Markets of Namereal. Thank you all for joining us. So, to kick off our discussion, I would like to gather a few views of you 3. To look at what, in your expertise and in your experience, what are the cornerstones and the key elements of a functioning digital identity? We have been discussing this in the previous panel for the German perspective. So it would be great if you could offer some international perspective as well. Christine, shall we start with you? What, in your view, are the key elements of a functioning digital identity? Oh, just a second, Christine. I don't think we can hear you. I'm looking at my...
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I was
now it's working.
Sorry for that. So in France, we have decided to use eID systems to simplify authentication and identification to French citizens. And this has been done through an eID federation, France Connect. And how does it work? It's quite simple. The citizen chooses his favorite eID among 5 eIDs, and it's really a real help to connect to more than 900 private and public online services. So we have more than 24 million of citizens using France Connect today, and we forecast to have more than 30 million by the end of 2022. So the main interest and the main way and the main interest to use France Connect is to avoid to create new credentials and new accounts and to reuse current eIDs. So I think this is why we are quite successful to use this eID federation. And it also leaves the choice to the citizens to choose the eIDs that they feel the most comfortable with. So this program is led by the French state, and this is also, I think, something very important because it's a real factor of trust with the French citizens, as we have more than 65% of French citizens who trust France Connect.
Thank you. And if we look from France to Belgium, Sylvie, can you describe what for It's Me and for the whole digital ID ecosystem in Belgium, what the key features are?
So in Belgium, it's a little bit different than in France because it's not a government initiative; it's a private initiative. So Belgium Mobile ID was launched in 2016, and we created the It's Me app 1 year later. So we are a consortium of the 4 big banks in Belgium and the telecom operators. And so we launched the It's Me app in 2017, and we got recognized by the Belgian government in 2018. So it's a little bit different than in France. Today we have 40% of our population because it's above 18, so it's 40% market reach that we have. And around our digital identity app, we have created 4 services. So the identification, sharing data, the authentication to log in public services. We have more than 2,000 public services and 500 companies using It's Me. Also, the confirmation used a lot in the financial world to confirm payments or to confirm orders. And we launched in 2019 also the signing service. So we have qualified signatures. And for us, what was really important is to have actually a collaboration between the private and the public world, because in Belgium, the government has launched the eID card 20 years ago. That was a huge success for public services, but was not used in the private sector. So this time, they said, well, the private sector, please give us an identity app that will work for both. So that's the way that they saw it in Belgium. So we have a really great collaboration, but it's the private world who are giving a digital identity to the public one.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we have 2 different approaches already. Antonio, I'm happy to hear what Italy has been doing and what the key features of the digital identity are over there.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Italy, it's obviously a bit different. I mean, similar but different, as we always do in Europe. So we have actually notified 2 different eID schemas to the European Commission. One is the typical. This one is my electronic identity card that you can see. We issued around 20 million. This is completely handled by the government and is delegated to the municipality. It's also used in the private sector. I mean, not a lot, because actually using it's a bit difficult. You have to have either a smartphone with an NFC reader or a smart card reader. I mean, it's a bit difficult. So in 2016, there was it was a government initiative, but the identity provider were from private companies. So there in Italy, there's a second schema called SPID, SPID. It's completely different because the electronic card schema is a kind of high level of assurance schema. I would say very complex to use because usually you may not have it with you. While SPID is completely different, as I said. There are 3 different levels of assurance. There is simple username and password, which is low. Then we have the substantial, which is a username, password plus a one-time password, which is usually something you have on a smartphone because it's cheap. And we have also a third level of assurance, which is the I, which is at the end of the day not used. We don't have real application of the high level of assurance. SPID is again, we have 21.5 credentials issued till now. We're growing 1 million per month, roughly. There was an incredible boost during the pandemic. We went last year from 6 to 19 million. And we have 9 identity providers acting for that. Around 7,000 public sector entities that are using SPID as a way of accessing services. And we have now 36 private companies that are using it. We hope, I mean, this number of exceed go high up to 1,000. I mean, we will talk maybe again later about the business model behind that, because this is completely free for the citizen. So basically, it's completely funded by the private sector. Citizens are not paying the use of SPID, and I will talk later maybe about where the money is coming from.
Okay, that's quite fascinating, and I think we do have a lot to learn, actually. So I'm going to pick your brains a little bit, if you allow. So if we compare private and government, so public services, what kind of publicly issued identities or credentials are out there to use public services, and can we also use them for private services as well? Maybe Christine, from your perspective, because you already told us France Connect is yes, it's a government project, and the idea is publicly issued. But maybe can you go a bit more into detail about this?
Yes, we have 5 eIDs. 3 of them are public, and 2 of them are private. And this is the interest to have a federation, because we can federate public and private identities. But it's also open to private and public online services. And we have projects also to provide an eID issued from our national eID, our passport and resident permit by 2022, but it's not available for now. And we are a little bit late, I would say, in France, because we've just launched our national eID card, because it has just started this summer. We started on a few territories and on a few territories in France, but it would be used broadly in France by this summer.
Okay, so there's a lot still happening. It's quite an ambitious time frame as well, right? If you say you're going to enroll in 2022. Looking at Belgium again, Sylvie, because you told us it's me as a private initiative, basically. Is it, or can it be used for public services, and how is it connected to the government issued identity framework, or how does it work exactly?
Yes, so as I said, it can be used for the public services since 2018. Actually, what Belgium did, they took the eIDAS regulation and they implemented it in Belgium. And they wrote down a royal decree where actually private companies could apply to become an identification mean. So that's what we did. We were not the only one, but it was a very tough trajectory. So for the moment, we are the only one that succeeded. And what we have in Belgium, when we want to connect to public services, we have a page a little bit like France Connect, but it's called Sesame, because there is where you have the different keys. And on the Sesame page, you have the different identity needs that are arranged by level of assurance. So you have the eID cards, and it's me on the highest level, and then you have substantial and lower level of identity. But in Belgium, actually, the level of assurance high identity means are used for 90% of the cases. So when you have 10 persons logging in on public services, 5 are using it's me for the eID, and then the other one is a token or a username and password. So in Belgium, we are quite used to choosing, well, the highest level of security. And behind the Sesame page, you have like 2,000 applications. So it's for local, so a municipality, but also federal. So when we want to log in for our taxes, so that's the period now in Belgium, we can do it with It's Me. Or when you want to see your public health insurance, or if you're a student, how many hours that you worked. So you can do that always through the same Sesame page by using It's Me or the eID.
How cool. You reminded me to do my taxes. Thank you for that.
Do mine till 2.
Looking at Italy again, Antonio, you told us before that the ID cards were issued by the government, of course. But is it possible to access public services with a private eID or ID system as well, or how is it connected?
Yeah, it's possible. Actually, the speed, even though it's handled by private identity provider, is a government scheme. So it's regulated by the government, is audited by the supervisory body in Italy. So from let's say, a European point of view, it's a government initiative. It's just financed by private sector companies. So you can either access public sector services through the identity card, or you can access them through speed. Obviously, with speed is much easier because you don't have to look for your card. You have your smartphone always with you. It's very, very simple. You put your username and password and then enter a one-time password and it's done. And the way it's used, actually, from public sector, which is completely different from the use we have today in the private sector, is that it is completely replacing the internal identity and access management software. Basically, all the large public sector service providers, such as security, social security, revenue services, they are switching off all the other means of accessing their system. There is a law for that, and the end of September, they will not allow any other way of access their system, which means, a really very, very big boost to the adoption of the digital identity.
Okay, and maybe if we could just follow up on this, because we often talk a lot, if we talk about digital identity, we talk about our own citizens, of course. But is it also possible, I don't know, for me, for instance, to log into the digital ID system in Italy and use services there, and maybe even use a public service if I need it?
Actually, you can access the public sector services, but not using digital identity from Italy. You would use digital identity of your country. There are these eIDAS nodes that are used for allowing third-party countries, member states, to access foreign public sector services. Unfortunately, this is only available for public sector, because it would be very, very nice to have also private sector, leverage this possibility. But this can be done through the eIDAS node. Using your German ID card, you can potentially access Italian social security. Yes.
Oh, okay. Is it the same for Belgium and France? Sylvie, what about Belgium? Can I just access government services there?
If you want to pay your taxes in Belgium, well, you will need to use your German eID card, because as explained by Antonio, we use the eIDAS node. So indeed, for the Belgian citizen living abroad, they can use, for example, there it's me to fill in the taxes in Germany. But that's for the public services. For the private services, we opened up the Netherlands a few weeks ago. So today it's not only the Belgian citizens, but also the Dutch citizens that can create an ITSME account. We are not recognized yet by the Dutch government, so because of course public sector is always local and national, but in the private sector, so it's not Benelux yet, because we like to have the three countries, but it's Belgium and Netherlands that is already accessible for ITSME and their citizens. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I guess it's the same in France, Christine.
It's the same. It's the same in France. We have to use. You have to use the eIDAS node, and it's not open yet. We intend to open it this summer because we are in the process of peer review, and we hope that it will be finished by this summer. But there is a little difference if you studied, for instance, in France, or if you were cured in France, or if you worked in France. You have a social security number, or maybe a taxes number, and then you can create an account and use France Connect if you are in this case of. So if you studied, if you were cured, or if you worked in France.
Oh, okay. So the system, and I guess the same is true for Italy and Belgium, will also work for permanent residents, so students or someone who has a job over there, which is quite useful and definitely something that came out of the eIDAS environment. So we already did quite a good job over there. What I took away from quite a lot of our sessions this morning was that there was often a particular sector that was driving the digital identity movement and the ecosystem forward. The banks were already mentioned by you, of course, Sylvie, because it's a privately driven initiative. So what I took from your statement was that banks and the telco sector was basically driving the whole thing forward. Antonio, would you say there's a special sector or specific companies that were driving the digital identity rollout and also the use cases in your country?
Today, I think it's mainly driven by the public sector. So yes, we have private companies, but use cases are mainly in the private sector. However, We see banks very important in this role, because what they do, and actually what we do, we recently announced that we are basically onboarding the customers of a digital bank in Italy called Fineco. They have 1.5 million, but this is a digital bank. It's not a regular bank where you have maybe 5 million customers, but then only 10% is really working with the digital part. So we did a kind of partnership with them, and from their home banking, the customer in 2 minutes can get a speed identity. So this is a way to reuse existing identities. This was done with several banks. We did with this digital bank, Fineco, but was done by other identity providers with other banks. What we see also is on the service provider side, banks and telcos are very important because their kind of B2C business model is driving a lot of transactions. So we see speed as a way of helping them in digital onboarding. But just in digital onboarding, what we don't have here is a very large private customer saying, okay, let's shut down my identity and access management system. I will use speed for authenticating, not just for onboarding, but for authenticating every time somebody needs to make a transaction. This would make a huge difference. It would be a huge savings. So in the public sector, we had huge savings because public sector companies are just shutting down all their systems. It's probably in the order of billions of savings.
And in France, Christine, was there also a specific sector that was very, very active in the digital ID environment, or while you were setting up France Connect?
Yes, the public sector is, as in Italy, the major part of the connections to France Connect. Around 90% of the connections are done through the public sector. And it's quite normal because France Connect is mandatory in public online services. And the most popular user cases are to renew your eID, your ID, passports, and so on. It's about 1/3 of the connections, and there is also 1/3. The second 1/3 done by retirement and pensions online, which is also which are very successful online services to use France Connect. We think that there are big opportunities to use France Connect for banks, but I didn't mention it before, but we are on a low level of insurance with France Connect, with the actual France Connect system, and we are launching these coming days France Connect Plus on a substantial level. And this will probably offer new opportunities for banks because they are really willing to have substantial level of assurance. And even if we already have most of the French banks in France Connect today at low level, we think that the user case will really increase with the substantial level and with our new platform, France Connect Plus.
Okay, so how exciting. I'm very looking forward to seeing how that will work out and how the rollout will go. Sylvie, just to ask you, of course, also, you already told us that the banks and the telcos were basically driving the initiative. Maybe you can elaborate a bit more about why that came to be, actually. So why them?
Well, we do it always a little bit different in Belgium. I think in digital identity, you have all the governments that are driving initiatives, or you have the banks, because banks are very regulated. They have very strong KYC and anti-money laundering regulations to follow, so they know who their customers are. And then you have the telecom operators, because they're managing this one, they're managing the phone. So these are the biggest player in the market. And in Belgium, they said, well, let's join forces instead of working against each other. So that's what we did. But that's the one are creating identity schemes, and then you have the one using digital identity. And in the usage, what we see, of course, we have governments because they can make it mandatory. It's a little bit easier a government because they don't need to find clients; they have citizens. But in the private world, it's when you have high regulation. So it's the banks, it's insurance. regulations. It's also the gaming sector. So online gambling is very highly regulated. They are using also It's Me to be sure that you can play and that you're old enough to play, but also notaries and the health sector. I think we talked about it a lot, and we will do also in the coming days. But everywhere where you have high regulation or sensitive data, digital identity is key.
That's absolutely true. When you just said, the government basically doesn't really have to look for customers because they have citizens. I was thinking back to your statement, Antonio, because you already kind of teased that you would explain the business model a bit more, because you told us it would be free for citizens, but the money has to come from somewhere. So how does it work?
Yeah. Actually, I'm very prepared, to answer this question, because the board of directors of my company is asking this every month to me, where the company will come from. So let's say potentially we have three ways to get return on the investment. Plus, we have to invent a fourth way, because the three ways are still something that will happen. It's not really happening today. First, as I said, it's completely free for citizens. And it's completely free for public sector entities that want to use it for accessing their services. So where do we make money? First way is we have something which is called a professional identity, which is not a personal identity. I mean, it's still Antonio identities, but this Antonio is not acting as a physical person. He's acting, for example, as a tax consultant. And we use this identity to access the revenue services for a third party. So not for Antonio, but for a customer or me. And we call this professional identity, and this is something we ask money for. There's a kind of fixed yearly fee for using this kind of identity. Very similar is the legal entity identity, so you can access, for example, again, to the revenue service or to the social security. I'm always talking about them because these are the main users today. Probably 50% of the access are done to go to revenue service or social security. So you access, for example, social security for not on behalf of Antonio, but on behalf of Namiriel. And that's another thing that we ask money for. But the real money will come when there will be a real, very high number of private sector companies. Today, there are 39 that act as service provider. We expect this number should go up and go well above 1,000, and we would get money from them. We did a kind of internal analysis. So we think a digital identity is worth no less than €10 per year. And that's where, over time we will get money back. Today, we didn't really get the investment back. So we invented a fourth way. So we say, okay, we are an identity provider, but what about becoming a service provider? So we became a service provider, and we are basically a private sector service provider. And we use the identity of Namiriel or of other IDPs for trust service, because we are also a trust service provider. So, for example, we offer things like issuing a certificate based on digital identity, even issuing what we call a disposable signature, so something you use just once to sign a document. And then we offer this service to third parties, so to telcos and banks, and they can use our service provider platform for onboarding their customer. And this is the way we are today basically getting back the investment. Now, you can do that without being an identity provider, but if you're an identity provider from, let's say, a marketing and the storytelling point of view is much better. So I hope if you are here, if you ask again the question, I will say everything is coming from private sector companies, and we are very happy.
Yeah, apparently there will be so, Antonio, but now I got curious again. Sylvie, can you explain how the business model is working in Belgium?
So we have at one side, we have the government, that is one of our clients. When I say we have around 500 companies, I would say the government is one company of these 500. So there the revenue is actually written down in the royal decree. So that's one revenue. And then the other ones, we have actually two revenue streams. It's one linked to identity, so sharing data, logging in and confirming. And this one, we have around 150 companies using these services, and it's a user-based pricing because we promised our 3 million users that we will make their life easier, safer, and that we will respect their privacy. So we said we will not sell it transaction-based. Otherwise, we know that the company would only put a button when they really need to have the information. So only for the KYC process and not for logging in and so on. So we said we will do it user-based. So we will force actually a high volume of using It's Me. So this is done by 150 companies. And then we have the signature that is used by 350 companies where they use a qualified electronic signature of It's Me. And this one, of course, is signature based because you don't put every day, you don't buy every day a house or you don't sign contracts every day. So that we do it signature based. So these are the different ways that we have money. But indeed, if you want to have a very high business model and having a lot of money very quick, you don't launch yourself in digital identity because the investment is very high. Security is very tough. It's a tough market. It's a new market, so it will take time. But well, with 17 million transactions a month, we're doing well. So.
Congratulations on this, Sylvie. I think especially the It's Me project really shows how privately driven initiatives can work together with government and really enable better public services as well. So I think it's really great to see.
The branded one. I think what is very important, what is France Connect also doing, is that we're using a brand and then we stand out. We're not a white label. I think that's also quite new in this sector, is that people have a name and that we're taking the responsibility of it.
Yeah, it's really great to see. Christine, I guess because you told us France Connect is a government project basically, and it's a government service behind it, so there's no need, especially for a business case per se, right? But maybe you can explain a bit more how you maybe plan to cooperate with initiatives from the private sectors and who will be able to use France Connect in the future.
We are launching France Connect Plus, as I just mentioned, at a substantial level. And I think this is what miss in our French framework for now. And this, I think, will be a real new approach and a real new things to have more private services joining France Connect. So this is the main, what we see to develop France Connect and the main issue that we will have in the coming months.
Maybe because if I look at the time, I already see that it's running out quite quickly. But just to give you a final question and get some final statements from you, because we have been talking a lot about the EU Commission's proposal. And I would like to collect your wishes on the proposal as well. So if you see the new initiative and the trend going towards the digital wallet and new use cases that we all hope to see in the future, what do you wish for if you look at the new EU Commission's proposal, and what do you hope that will enable in Europe? Maybe Antonio, shall we start with you?
Yeah, and potentially for us as a trust service provider, as a provider of digital onboarding, this would be a kind of Garden of Eden, I would say, if it's going the way it should go, because we could use that throughout Europe. Today, I mean, we cannot do that. If we offer to a European company a solution, we should differentiate. So use speed in Italy, use maybe a video identification in another country, bank ident in Germany, bank ID in the Nordic, etc., which is quite, complex. With a digital wallet, potentially, we could have just one way of accessing to digital identity all over Europe. That would be fantastic. If it's going to start and succeed, it would be really great for us.
Christine, what do you hope for if you look at the EU proposal?
I think that for France, it could be a real help to accelerate uses of substantial and high levels, because it's not the case in France. As I said before, France Connect is the main door to access to online services, and it's a low level of assurance. So it could be, I think, a good way to accelerate all these uses and also to upgrade the level of assurance of French online services. So I think this is the main interesting thing that we see in the wallet for now.
And Sylvie?
Not going over the whole peer review again in the Netherlands, I think we can say that. But I think to have an interoperability between the countries, it's not only through the eIDAS node, but also the identity. We have, of course, extended our identity now so to the Netherlands, but with the former version of eIDAS, we should go through the whole flow again with the peer review, and actually our app has been reviewed already. So I think that will help us, and the other parts, because we're also working today on attribute sharing or data sharing. So not only the identity, but all the other information around, as our diplomas, our health data, to have a framework where we understand each other from one country to another, having the same levels, having also accreditation, trust services that will help us all, I think, to have a safer and a more digital Europe, where we can move from one country to another, that we can go from Italy to France to Germany without starting all over again.
That will be truly great. And with those statements, let me please thank you all for sharing your expertise with us. I really hope that we'll make good use of them and transform our own digital identity system here in Germany. And let's please keep in touch so we can drive the whole initiative further for the EU. Thanks again, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.